So I'm not good?
Yeah, it's good.
All right.
Eating deer jerky. Deer jerky.
All right. Yes, sir. All right. He's starting to record.
All right, guys. This is course PS-260C, Ministry Non-Negotiables. And it's similar to what we just had in the previous class, and for those of you that are on the video watching this, you've got the syllabus there. It's just a continuation of the different non-negotiables that we find in the ministry. What's different about this semester's course is that you only have one book. It's called this one here, Leading on Empty. It's not what you would necessarily consider to be a strong seminary textbook. It's not a textbook as such. It's kind of enjoyable reading. This guy has a church in Honolulu, of all places. He's planted over 100 churches in the Pacific Rim, which is outstanding. Mm-hmm. So he has some information about burnout, and I want you to read it. And what you can see there on the second page of the syllabus, that there's only one writing assignment and only one exam. The exam will be out of the book, and I'll go over the writing assignment with you if you'll turn there. This is what's important. The writing assignment is to take the reading assignment. You got to read the book first, and then take the content of chapter 8. Right? Chapter 8 is called. It says it's 7 lessons hard learned, and I want you to write a short essay on each one of those. Each one of those 7 lessons. All right. He's got different lessons in there. Let me see if I can go to chapter 8 and tell you what they are. I don't remember them. Chapter 6, chapter 7, chapter 8. Here's the first one, for instance, is do not overproduce. Lesson 2, steward your energy. Number 3 is rest well, my friend. Number 4 is whatever. You'll just have to read through them. They're all very good. Exercise your way to recovery. It talks about things like sleep. Hello, so that you're not just burned out all the time. And so I want you to write just a small essay on that, a short essay on each of the 7 lessons. And once again, you don't have to agree with the author at all. I don't care. I want your input. I want you to think. You don't have to do a lot of research here. But it would do you well to do some research. And but you can see, if you go and you turn back to to page 6, that on page 6, if you just look at the lectures that we're going to have, that the majority of them, all the way up to to lesson 13, are going to be on the relationship that you have with your wife. And I'll explain that as we get started here in a minute. So I may get through sooner. It may take me all 16. So I've got living above reproach as I'll throw another one of my studies in there if I can get through. But I've taught through this several times, and I take my time on it because I think it's so critically important. So if you have anybody have any questions on this, this is a fun. These 3 books I've given you for these last 2 courses are fun books to read. They're easy reading. Don't tell me they're too long, too hard, small print. None of them are like that. I've been very intentional on picking them out so that you will enjoy them, all right? They're books I enjoyed. I enjoyed the exhortation from each of them. So I want to see how you do with the short essay type thing. You're going to have to be prepared to just talk sometimes, not for a long time. So, any questions on that, on the syllabus? It's the same as everything else in there is the same as it normally is. So. All right, let's pray as we get started. Father, we just thank you again for this day. I am thankful and grateful for who you are. I'm grateful and thankful for how you work, how you strengthen us in our life, Lord, how you teach us through the different struggles and trials that we all have to go through. But Father, as we begin this study on the non-negotiable of loving your wife like Christ loved the church, I pray that you would give us incredible ears to hear. That everything that we study, everything about us as men, loving our wife in a way that's the same way that Christ loved his church, would penetrate our hearts so much that we would be some of the best husbands on the planet.
Yes.
Help us to love them just the same way that Christ loves us. Remarkable. We love you, Father. We commit this time over the next 16 weeks to you. And we ask that you be honored and exalted in all that we do. In Jesus' name. Amen. I want to go through some preliminary. I want to give you sort of an overview of this course. This study on loving your wife as Christ loved the church is broken down into two parts. All right. The first part is material that I have developed over 40 years or so of doing marriage counseling. You can use it for premarital counseling. You can use it for just normal counseling in marriage that people have. It's very insightful. There's a lot of information. I've tried to condense it down. I have a lot more material, and I have condensed it down over a period of time so that I use it when I am doing premarital counseling. Normally it lasts, how long, honey? Is it 8 weeks or 6 weeks? I forget. It's either 6 or 8 weeks where I spend about an hour and a half with a couple, and we go over each one of the studies and stuff. And I think that you will find it very helpful. You're going to need it. 50% of the people in your church are probably divorced or getting divorced, right? And so there's a lot of struggles about marriage and about the relationship of husbands to wives. We have all kinds of stuff in our culture today that is so bizarre that it's mind-boggling to me what people are doing to their bodies, the mentality. The culture has accepted it, adopted it, has done everything it could do to embrace it. And here we are on the precipice of just destroying our country and its morals. The strength of our country, obviously, is our faith in God, but the second part is having strong families. And that strong family begins with the relationship of the husband and the wife. So there may not I think in all of the sections that we cover, this is by far the longest. There are my notes on it with one extra page here. That's the longest. This is the longest study. It could be a course in and of itself, be a completely different course, disconnected from ministry non-negotiables, but I think it's that important. And there may not be any more important reality for a pastor to grasp for his ministry, any more practical reality for him to grasp and understand and appreciate and embrace than the fact that he needs to love his wife like his church. I mean, like any greater than the love that he provides for his wife. I would go so far to say, and I think this is the right statement, I think it would be unreasonable for any of us to expect that God is going to bless your ministry in any way if you do not love your wife like Christ loved the church. I just don't think he's going to do it. I just don't think you can have a bad marriage and a good ministry. They just don't go together. It doesn't even sound right. You know, it just doesn't even sound normal or correct spiritually. And so, if you're mistreating your wife or neglecting her or demeaning your wife in any way, just taking her for granted, whatever it may be. Bobby, I know that you're not married yet, but you will be married. Okay.
Lord willing.
No, you will be married. And I want you to be a good husband. This is a great course for you. All right? This is as good of a course as you could take to start off with it. So we'll start praying that God will lead somebody into your life.
Lead the right one.
Yeah, that's right. Right. In my mind, there's only one.
Well, I met quite a few of the wrong ones.
Right.
The one that are out there.
Right. So I think when understood, I want to give you some verses. I want to mention, I want to give you 3 passages. I want you to turn there with me. That will talk about the relationship that a husband is to have with his wife. If you understand these verses and you implement these verses in your marriage, they will literally change your marriage. 1 Peter 3:7. I taught on this verse in my church for 11 weeks. 1 Peter 3:7. The Bible up here. It's a very powerful verse. It needs a lot of attention. It's full of content. There's 6 verses written to the wife and only 1 verse written to the husband, and I think the 1 verse to the husband includes everything that was said to the wives because of the word likewise. Mm-hmm. His husbands likewise dwell with them with understanding. In other words, everything he said to the wives, he says in verse 1 there, you'll read it, wives likewise be submissive to your own husbands, even if they do not obey the word, they without a word may be won by the conduct of their wives. The word likewise is talking about verse 23 in Christ, and then servants in verse 18 of chapter 2. And then when you get down to the husband, he's got all of those to add up. And it says that we're to dwell with them with understanding, giving honor to the wife as to the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers may not be hindered. I mean, if there was ever a verse that was needed for men in the ministry, you don't want your prayers to be hindered in any way. And so you've got to dwell with your wife in a particular way, and we'll talk about all of that. We'll go through that in quite some detail. Go to Ephesians chapter 5, which is where most people would probably turn. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 25 to 29. It says, husbands, love your wives just as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for her, that he might sanctify her, set her apart, cleanse her, purify her with the washing of water by the word, that he might present her to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she should be holy and without blemish. So husbands ought to love their own wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself, for no one has ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes it and cherishes it, just as the Lord does the church. And then if you go to 1 Corinthians chapter 7, 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 3 and 4, it says, "Let the husband render to his wife the affection due her, and likewise also the wife to her husband. The wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. And likewise, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does." Now, I want to say this, and I guess it was somebody, after we finished the last class, somebody was talking to me about the importance of what we were talking about in the last class, about counting the cost. And for me, there may not be a more important task for seminaries in the training of ministers than that of helping to develop godly husbands who not only have a really passionate love for the church, but men who have this incredibly passionate love for their wives and for their children. And it's critical that the man who stands in the pulpit, he has to know what are God's standards for marriage. We just read some of them. Those are God's standards. They're non-negotiable. They are standards that he himself has got to embrace. He's got to incorporate them into his life. Take the standards, take the principles, take the commands, incorporate them into his own marriage so that he can serve as a model for the church that he is pastoring. Understand what I just said? You're the target, but you're the upfront person as well. You're the model that's demonstrating for everybody else what a really great marriage should be like. You don't talk about your wife from the pulpit in a negative way. You don't talk to her in a demeaning way around other people. You don't talk to her in a demeaning way, period. You don't mistreat her. You give her all the respect you give her more respect than you do anybody else. She should be the love of your life. Everything that you ever dreamed of having. My wife is, she's my dream come true. Don't know any other way to say it. And I would say that these standards for marriage are just non-negotiable for anybody that's a pastor. They're non-negotiable. You cannot, there's no debate about this. This is where you have to land. And if you're not able to do that, I know so many, all the statistics that we were reading in the previous couple of hours on ministry about how marriages, pastors and their families and their wives and their marriages are literally falling apart because of the ministry. The ministry does not come before my wife. Covington Theological Seminary does not come before my wife. Shineville Baptist Church does not come before my wife. My wife comes before all of them. She is my primary ministry in life. And so, the more a pastor violates those standards, the greater the negative impact is going to be not only on his marriage, but on his children, on his family. even on his extended family and on his ministry as well. Now, I want to break the course down into two distinct parts. In part one, I'm going to provide you general information that I have developed over 40 years of doing marriage counseling. And this is specifically geared toward, it's fast moving, it's fast paced. I'm going to go through it that way as best I can. You'll have the notes. I'll bring them to you next week. There's a lot of information in a little bit of content on how to talk to people about marriage, even marriages that aren't going well. Normally if I'm doing premarital counseling with somebody, it's me and my wife, so she's heard this many times, for years, literally. But this is good stuff. And every section is relatively short, it's relatively simple. I think I have 8 sections, I think. And it was developed to be shared with a couple in one sitting. I'll take one study, I'll share it with them in an hour and a half, 2 hours, however long it takes me to talk through it with them, let them ask their questions, go through. We talk about everything. Talk about everything. And so we'll address 7 different areas. And I'll just read what they are: basic stress points, qualitative differences, the needs of a husband, the needs of a wife, sex, becoming one, and nurturing. And all of them are very, very important. Now, when you go through the notes, you'll notice that I haven't documented anything. Because when I started 40 years ago developing these studies just for me to do marriage counseling, I didn't see the need for documenting where I got some of my information from that helped me, all right? So it's not documented, and I want to give other people credit. I just didn't think it was necessary at the time, and it wasn't at that time. But on top of that, over the years, I've taken the material and developed it. I've changed it to suit my method of counseling, what I thought was important, as I've grown and matured in that particular area. So you should be able to use this material if you're doing any kind of marriage counseling. If you have any children that have ever been through a divorce, I have a daughter that's been through a divorce. It's a really, really difficult thing. It's very difficult. I know Chris and them have.
Yeah, my daughters, all of them.
Right. I mean, it's very difficult. If you've been through a divorce, it's a difficult thing, not just your children. So there's a lot of stuff here that can provide you with what I consider to be a realistic picture of some of the problems and some of the issues in marriage and how you can resolve those. This is practical marriage 101. I can call it that way. Very needful. I would say up front, as I get started in this section, in the section on marriage counseling, this is not a course on marriage counseling. It is, of course, this study is on loving your wife like Christ loved the church. But you've got to know the differences between you and your wife. You've got to understand how your wife is different than you are. She looks differently than you should do. She got different body parts. She thinks differently. She acts differently. She is different. Aren't you glad? Aren't you glad that you aren't marrying the same sex? I mean, I don't know how to say it any other way.
Everybody in this room is.
Everybody here is, So as silly as that may sound,
yeah.
It's the culture in which we live. And so it's going to get worse. Everybody understand that? It's going to get worse. It's going to get worse in the family, in the church. You're going to wind up having families that kids are rebellious. They get involved in the LGBTQ community. Things happen, all of that, and you're going to have to learn how to deal with these things. These are real issues. These are real issues, and when you start when you start taking a sensitive issue like this, like what we're talking about, and you don't know, you just don't know how to handle it or address it, and you just up there pounding away, you'll have families that are moving out of your church very quickly if you're not careful. You've got to learn how to love people in spite of their sinfulness. Right. Then in part 2, I'm going to share with you a more detailed teaching on 1 Peter 3:7. It will include the other passages that we read. And everything in that section is well documented. I've got all my footnotes there, I think, so that you can, should be very challenging to you as a husband. It'll be challenging. It will be convicting. Let me back up. Let me say it this way. If your wives were here, they'd be shaking their head.
They would what?
Be shaking their head. Yes, 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 yes. That's the way I want to be loved. It's the way I want to be cared. All right, part 1. We're going to talk about stress points. Stress points. Everybody knows what stress is. Stress is where you're strained in some area of your life, and when that happens, it creates a great deal of pressure in your life, right? If you've ever had something go wrong in your marriage, and you and your partner weren't getting along, and you weren't talking to each other, it's very stressful. It's very, very stressful. Creates a lot of pressure. Maybe you don't get along with your boss or your in-laws. And when that happens, when that stress level occurs, it becomes very stressful for you personally. You know, I've always said, and I think that it's very important, that you don't just marry your wife, you marry into a family. There's a lot of baggage sometimes to that, right? Sometimes it's good baggage, but sometimes it's not so good baggage. And you marry into a family that's different than your family. And if you think that there are a lot of differences between you and your wife, which you will agree with me with after we finish this section here, there's even more differences that cause stress in families. You know, when you look at the difference between your family and somebody else's family, different values, different monetary backgrounds, different educational levels, different beliefs, different faiths, all of that kind of stuff that is a part of being married into another family. And then when your kids get older and they marry and they get divorced, it gets even worse. Because they get remarried, and then you get another family, and you don't ever know where to go on Christmas, you don't know where to go on Thanksgiving, you don't know if you've even had anybody show up for turkey. It really gets confusing, it really gets very, very difficult. And then the next thing you know, they're off, they're down here going to visit, they're going there to visit, and share Christmas with them this year, they'll share it with you next year. It gets to be very complicated. Very complicated. It creates a lot of tension and anxiety in people's lives. And every marriage has basic stress and pressure points that actually have the potential to destroy your marriage and relationship with your wife. It can destroy it, these basic stress points. So I want to give you a number of stress points. All right, just write these down. Stress point number 1, unexpected differences. Unexpected differences. The person that you are married to now was much different, is much more different than you thought they were before you got married. You've learned things about them that you didn't know. It's the old adage that love is blind. It is before marriage. But after marriage, you see everything about that person that you don't like. And so that creates an immediate stress point. When the person that you thought you had married was different than what you thought they actually were. I think that most of the time conflicts arise in young marriages because of this very thing. My wife and I have been married for 51 years, and I know more about her than any person on the planet. And I love her more than any person on the planet. But in our marriage right now, there are no differences that I'm not aware of. I don't know of any, sweetheart. I know everything about my wife that I need to know. I know everything about us that's different. It's not a stress point. I've accepted it. She's accepted it. We embrace it. We love the differences. I don't want her to be like me. But we do grow closer and closer together over time. But it wasn't always like that, because she married a bum. And I came from a culture where I took my clothes off, threw them in a corner, and she didn't do that. So I thought, well, this is going to be great. This is going to be really great. I'm going to make out, man, she's a great house. You know, she takes care of the home really great there with her parents and helps them out, man. It'd be great for me. Well, it was a very stressful time. You know, the first couple of years, me getting straightened out what I was going to do with my dirty clothes when I took them off. And eventually, we kept working it down to one chair. No, really, we did. I'm not kidding you. We worked it down. She said, "You can have that chair. You just put them there." And we finally worked it out, and now I put them up, right?
Yes, but then I moved the chair.
Yeah, she moved the chair.
I'll show you that.
I didn't have a chair.
Unexpected differences.
So, the number one complaint I hear all the time is this. These are the complaints that I hear, that Brenda and I hear. I just don't understand him. This is two people that are married. I don't understand my husband, or I don't understand my wife.
I don't understand me either.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Or she just does not make sense to me. I don't get it. This is the best one. I can't figure him out. Number 4, I have no idea why he acts a certain way. If you're like most couples, these are real things that happen in marriage. It's almost laughable to me, because my wife and I are exact opposites. We are exact opposites. If I'm hot, she's cold. Right? Say amen. If I'm hot, she's cold. If I'm cold, she's hot. I've always told her she's hot, so. But one of you's an early riser and the other likes to sleep late. This happens all the time. One of you loves to talk, the other is a bump on the log. One of you loves to spend money, the other is a tightwad. One of you loves to cuddle, the other is a porcupine. A porcupine. One of you is organized, the other is unorganized. My wife has the gift of organization, and she's really helped me in that area of my life. But she knows where everything is. If I ask her, I said, "Honey, where's such and such?" If I wanted some food or something, and I didn't know where it was, she'd tell me the shelf, the door. If it was the second or third shelf, it's right beside this. And if I go in there and look for it and don't find it, she says, "That's where it is." I said, "No, I look for it." That's a bad thing to do. For your wife to tell you where it is and you tell her that you look for it and it's not there. Because she goes and opens the door and there it is right in front of you. So, I was looking for something the other day, and I'm telling you the truth, I'm not lying. It was in the refrigerator. And I knew it was in the refrigerator because she had told me it was in the refrigerator.
I like that logic. I knew it was there because you told me it was
It
there.
was in the refrigerator. I knew it was in the refrigerator. In fact, if she asked me to go look for something and I don't find it, now I've reached a point in my life where I'll say, honey, I'm not telling you that it's not there. I just could not find it.
Amen.
So she goes and gets it right where she told me it was. I looked in the refrigerator to find something, and I think it was half and half milk or something like that to go in my coffee. Something the milk we had for coffee had spoiled. Something. There it was, right there. Just right there. I looked everywhere. I looked everywhere. I was looking on this shelf, that shelf, blah, blah, blah. I just knew it was in there, and I wasn't going to go tell her that I couldn't find it. Because she'd come in there, reach up there and get it, and hand it to me. So I just said, I'll drink the coffee black. I just drink it black. And then later on today, when I wasn't looking for it, I went in there and looked at it, and there it was, right where it was supposed to be. So, one of you's always on time, the other's always late. One of you's always on time. My wife's never in a hurry. She's never in a hurry. She's never in a hurry. I get in a hurry sometimes. But I like her slowing me down. So my wife and I are very different. We're different as night and day. I can almost say with complete confidence that when we got married, that we were literally exact opposites in every area of our life. The way we handled confrontations, the way that we addressed different issues, the way that we handled money, what we did with our resources, how we handled our time, managed it, all of those kind of things. We were very different. And since then, we've learned how to appreciate our differences and to use them to strengthen each other. Listen to me carefully. We make each other stronger. Our differences make us stronger. Your wife has differences than you have that will make you stronger.
Tracy puts it, we fill each other's holes or gaps.
That's right. That's a great way to put it. I've never heard it that way, but I like that.
Different shortcomings.
I like
We
that.
knock them out.
Differences are not wrong. They're just differences. They're just differences. We're made different. God made us different. You don't want your wife to be just like you. You need a sounding board. You need somebody that's going to compliment you and supplement you. And maturity is when you realize that differences do not mean right or wrong. They just reveal that we are different. In fact, differences, in my mind, they bring balance to a marriage. They kind of settle us out so that it's not always this way. It's balanced out in the marriage, the differences, when you learn to trust one another. I think the marriages, I know this is going to sound crazy, the marriages to me that have the most problems are the ones where the couples are exactly alike. They don't have any differences. They think alike, they're alike. They don't have anything to talk about. They're bored to tears with each other. They're just bored to tears with one another. And they don't communicate much. Because they know exactly I know exactly what he's going to say or what she's going to say. I mean, we think alike. We think alike. I think we do. I think we have reached that point, but we're certainly not bored with each other at this point in our life. Stress point number 2. These are obvious. These are intuitive. We have opposite bodies, different bodies. Every cell in a man's body is different than every cell in a woman's body. I'm going to say that again. Every cell in my body is different from the cells in my wife's body. Women mature faster. If you haven't noticed, the young girls mature faster today with all the hormones they got in the milk and everything else that's out there. Little 12-year-old girls look like they're 17, running around in a way they shouldn't. Women have a slower metabolism. so that things don't operate the same way inside of them, because you probably can relate to some of this with your EMS things. They have a slower metabolism. We have different body parts. Men shave their face, women shave their legs. I've never shaved under my arm, but my wife shaves under her arm every week, I guess. You know, we're different. We're made different. This is big right here. Women ovulate and have cycles. I don't even know what that is. I don't ovulate, right? I do understand what menopause is. I think men go through womenopause. You know, we reach a point where life changes for us as well. But women have estrogen hormones and men have testosterone hormones, and they're very different. We know here from reading in Scripture that men are generally stronger than women, physically. They're physically stronger than their wife. Not necessarily mentally or emotionally, they're just physically built differently. Number 3, stress point number 3. We have contrasting behaviors. We're different in how we behave. Did you know that men and women think different? Did you know that men and women think different? Let me say that one more time. Did you know that men and women think different? The problem that men have is that they assume that women think like they do. That's the assumption every man on the planet makes, is that, hey, my wife thinks like I do, so everything's going to work out great. No, just get rid of that idea tonight. Women assume that men think like women. That's not right either. I don't think like women. I think like a man. I'm built differently. I think differently. There's different things running through my brain. And so we think very differently. And what a man says tends to reflect what he thinks. What a woman says tends to reflect what she feels. All right? Big principle. A man just says, he says what he thinks. A woman, when she talks, she's reflecting what she feels. We're on completely different planes. Men watch different things on television. The only thing I care about watching on television are sports. That's it. That's it. I love football season. I like the Atlanta Braves.
And gun stuff.
Yeah, y'all, you can do that. You can go. I don't like guns, but I have some, you know. Chris got me started and all that.
There you go, Chris.
Anybody know what my wife likes to watch?
Hallmark.
Well, yeah, she loves Hallmark.
You watch gardening shows, right?
HGTV. You know what the HGTV stands for? It's the Home and Garden Television Network, right? She loves to watch that. I can go in there almost any time during the day, and if the television is on, it's on HGTV, and we're recording the episodes so we don't miss any. And they have multiple stations on, and so we're recording those so that she can watch those as well.
How do you think she's trying to organize so well?
I don't know. I'll go to bed earlier, and she'll come to bed later, and she will have watched 2 or 3 of those at night. They're interesting, but I couldn't watch them every night. You know, most women care more about romance, whereas most men only care about sex. Number 4, stress point number 4. We have diverse backgrounds. I bet if I went around the room and you were to tell me what your background was when you were growing up compared to what your wife's, probably know you're not married, you will be one day, that what your background is relative to your wife's background, they would be very, very different. Probably grew up in different parts of the country. James, you grew up in Wisconsin, and Cindy grew up in Massachusetts or somewhere, Boston, somewhere like
Yeah,
that.
in the Boston area.
Chris, you grew up in the Midwest?
Nashville,
No, yeah, okay. You grew up in, what's that called?
Nashville, it's south.
Okay.
It's just a big city south.
Okay. But your wife grew up in Aiken.
And Aiken.
All right.
My
Well,
wife.
Brenda and I both grew up in Aiken, so well, you grew up in Windsor, and I grew up in Aiken.
She made that clarification quick.
Yeah, that was quick, wasn't it?
Whoa!
Whoa, buddy. So,
Something about Aiken apparently.
My wife was raised in a
y'all,
Christian home.
you caught that, right?
I did. She said no.
So-
Windsor.
Yeah. So, we're not only different in our upbringing, but we're different in our childhood. We had different friends. We went different places. We went to different churches. We went to different schools. Our childhood was very different. We had different jobs. We had different factors that made us different, that keep making us more different than we were initially. Not only is every woman different from every man, but every woman is different from every other woman. And that's a big old statement. That's a big old statement. My wife is different from every other woman on the planet. Thank goodness. I don't say that in a derogatory way, but she's different. And I love that about her. Your wife is different from every other woman on the planet. It's a good thing. We're all unique. We look different. We talk different. We act different. We come from very different kinds of families. She came from a family that, if I can share this, honey, hopefully I'm not saying too much. She came from a family where her parents loved each other, but they never expressed that love, right? I don't know if she ever heard her father tell her mother that he loved her.
That's how I grew up.
Huh?
That's how I grew up.
Yeah. You know, I probably tell my wife how much I love her about 50 times a day, at least, in some way or another, you know. But I grew up in a family that only had one parent. So I didn't have a father when I was growing up. I didn't even know my father. You know, I probably met him 5 or 6 times in my entire life before he died. But her parents, they lived together. I mean, they were good to me. They were good to her. My father wasn't good to me at all. He didn't send a Christmas card or a Christmas gift or a birthday gift, didn't call, see how his children were doing. So we come from very different families, and whenever you marry someone, in essence, you marry into their family. I said that earlier. I cannot tell you how big that is. I cannot tell you how huge and monumental that one aspect is, that you marry into a family. Trust me, but that can be a source of great tension, because there are some families, some parents that are overly involved in their children's marriage. Overly involved. Want to have input about everything that goes on. And invariably, it leads to many, many problems. The parents have certain expectations that they expect that their child's partner, they're going to be treated, and it's not working out that way. And the next thing you know, you've got tension from multiple levels at one time. That is not and should not be the case, because Genesis 2:24 says that we are to leave our father and mother and be joined to our wives.
Another angle of that is I have a brother-in-law that decided he needed to initiate me into the family. And it wasn't a real pleasant experience.
It wasn't a good experience?
I did not like him for a while. Yes.
It didn't go well?
He just thought by running me into bushes and went in his Jeep and, you know, jet skiing and you know,
Zinging you off.
yeah, trying to knock me off it or throwing up water on me and just, you know, that type of stuff. It was, I mean, we laugh about it now, but I didn't really like him at the time, you know.
He was testing you, brother.
He was.
It was a test.
I love him now. I really do.
Listen to this one. This is still under stress point 4, diverse backgrounds. We have different educational levels. You know, I think it's really important that you marry somebody that's at your same intellectual level, that you can have a conversation with, that you can debate and discuss and have dialogue about things in marriage, that you're at the same intellectual level. There are a lot of couples that get married, and they get married because they're attracted to one another physically, and then when they get married, they find out that one of the partners is much more, has a completely different intellectual perspective and outlook on life than the other one does, and when they get together, they don't know how to talk. They don't know how to carry on a meaningful conversation. It's not meaningful for either one of them. One's over the head and the other one's under the feet, you know, where they don't talk to one another. I can promise you, I've dealt with many couples that was the case, and it was very obvious that was the case, that they did not know how to communicate in a meaningful way. We have different interests. Most men hate shopping and most men love it. I mean, most women love it. I kind of like going shopping with my wife now. I used to hate it. It's not that I hated being with her, it's that I just didn't like shopping. I knew what I wanted. That was part of my manhood, right? I knew where it was in Lowe's. I knew what row it was on. I knew what size it was. I knew what I wanted to get. I wanted to go there and get it and go home.
See, that's a breakthrough. So you know where everything is in Lowe's, but she knows where everything is in the house.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's. I'm just saying we're different, right? I'm just talking about practical things here that we know. But we kind of laugh at it. But once you get married, all of these are stress points in your marriage. That's why I called them stress points. They create tension in the marriage. Men like sports and women like romance movies. My wife likes the Hallmark. You know, I'll sit down and watch them with her every once in a while. I mean, she likes the romance stuff. She doesn't care too much about a hockey game. Yeah, but she'll watch them with me. You know, I'll watch the romance thing with her. When I go to a store, I know exactly what I want. I know where it is. I go get it. I check out. I go home. My wife, on the other hand, never does that. Never. Ever. If she has a list of 5 things that she's supposed to get at the grocery store, she may get 25 things. Sometimes we've been out shopping and just out in, say, you know, somewhere, and I said, "What are we looking for?" And she said, "Well, I don't know." You know.
I'm sure it's around somewhere.
We don't know. Well, I don't know.
Cindy is.
She'll just say, "This is the answer that she gives me, honey. I'm not trying to demean you anyway. I mean, this is just real life, right?"
Man, that's how
She
Cindy
says,
is.
"I'm just looking. I'm just looking." And sometimes I'm not sure. I just want to look, because I know if I'm going to look, I'm going to probably wind up buying things that we don't want or that we don't need.
You know, if these.
But I've learned. I'll let her buy what she wants. Okay. I've learned that.
I always thought if these stores, these department stores, would just put chairs for men and maybe a football game on or something. The women.
You've ever seen the husband, what do they call it, the husband daycare?
Yeah, the Walmart that got with the white socks and the shorts on.
I've seen, like, actually stores have that. They just have an area, husband can sit down, she
Adult
can hand him the
daycare.
purse, and you just watch TV, honey, can get you when you're done.
Adult daycare, that sounds good. I'm close to there. I'm gonna probably need that pretty soon.
Yeah, I mean, I'll let my wife shop all she wants.
But listen, I know that about my wife now. And it doesn't bother me. I don't want her to go shopping without me. Not because I want to go shopping, it's because I want to be with her. But I know what to expect, so I'm not going to get frustrated walking around Walmart or going into a store because she wants to look at more things than I want to look at. I'm willing to just to look at what I want to look at and get out of there, especially Walmart. All right? But she may want to go up and down every aisle, and I'm okay with that. And I'm not frustrated with it anymore. All right? There was a point.
There was a time.
There was a stress point. The stress point's gone. So I'm going to go with you, sweetheart. We're going to have a good time. You just take your time. I'm not in a hurry. It's no wonder that couples don't understand each other with all these differences that we're talking about. But this is the first foundation for a successful marriage. Turn in your Bibles to Proverbs chapter 24. Proverbs chapter 24. Verse 3. The reason I picked this verse is because it uses the word house. It says, through wisdom a house is built. I think you could say, through wisdom a marriage is built, right? And by understanding it is established. So if you don't understand that there's stress points, you're not going to have a good marriage. You're not going to have a good, strong family if you don't understand some of these stress points. I got some more for you. So how do you know when you have wisdom and when you have understanding, like this verse is asking for? It's when you, in the context of this, it's when you begin to understand and appreciate the differences, the legitimate, God-given, divinely ordained differences between you and your wife that He's given you to complement one another, so that your strength may be her weakness and her strength may be your weakness. And as you grow together, they both become your strength. All right? My wife and I are very strong. We don't argue. We don't fight. We just don't. We don't do that. We know. We know what each other thinks. We don't have hot buttons that we push. Just don't do it. If you know that you're different in an area, then that simple understanding should compel you not to create tension because of the difference. If we're in my house and I get cold, all right, I know before I go to turn the heater up that my wife is hot. Our metabolisms are different for some reason, and if I'm hot, she's very cold. So we can be watching TV and I got a blanket around me and she doesn't. All right? If I say, honey, do you mind if I cut the heat up? Honey, I'm burning up. That's it. That's the end of the discussion. I know. Here's what she tells me. Honey, can you tell them what you tell me?
Go get your bathrobe.
Go get your bathrobe. I know that. I know that. So I don't ask. I know what the answer is to that. You need to go get your bathrobe because I'm about to burn up. So I go get my bathrobe. What does that do? Tell me. It removes the tension. It takes the stress. It's understanding. It's wisdom. It's not fighting over things that I don't say, well, you always get your way about the heater. I don't even think that way. You know? She could say the very same thing about me, and it'd be right from her perspective. So I think it should help you to understand that it's not profitable to be demanding that your partner change to be like you. It's not profitable. It's not spiritually profitable. It's not healthy for the marriage. If you know that you're going to really have struggles with the differences between you and your marriage partner, then you should never get married until you work those differences out. Some of them you can't, Robbie, just for your benefit. Some of them you will never know about until you actually get married.
Well, one benefit that I have on the outlook of it comes from a tragedy, obviously. But when my mom died, 2 sisters and a sister-in-law happened to come down from Wisconsin.
Mhm.
And she actually passed that morning. We were going to go see her at the nursing home. And we went out to dinner that night. One of the things that absolutely irked me about my mother is every time we would have Chinese or sushi, she'd get her chopsticks and rub them together and say, look, I'm playing Gibbs off of NCIS. It would irk me every time she'd do it. But I can tell you, sitting down to have dinner with my 3 aunts that night, that was one of the stupidest things. Like, I'd get aggravated, but that was one of the things that I wanted so bad that first night.
Mm.
So, I mean, like I said, I've got a different outlook, having gone through something like that. Like, I do recognize that it's gonna be those things that aggravate us, those things that are seemingly stupid on the surface, but for whatever reason, just pricks at us, for whatever reason. But those are gonna be the things that when something like that happens, that we miss the most.
That's right. That's right. You don't know how much you miss it until it's gone.
That's it.
That's right.
It'd be the stupidest things.
You know, it's kind of crazy. We just, we've been keeping my son's dog for a little bit. Not for a little bit, for years. And the dog got old and was incontinent and had dementia and just, I mean, it was a struggle to go home after we'd been away, like to teach here or whatever it was. And we didn't know if anything was going to be on the floor. But it's taken us a while to get used to not seeing her around the house. You know, it's like, you know, where's Maddie? You know, it's like you just kind of, she kind of grew on us, you know. And you know, even though my wife and I are still very different, after, you know, been married 51 years, there's not one single thing that I want her to change. Not one single thing. I don't want her to change one thing. I tell her all the time, don't I don't want you to change one thing. I like you just like you are. You don't have to change. You can do anything you want to. You can turn from a brunette with black hair to a blonde. You can go from long hair to short. You can go from straight to curly. I don't care. I love you for who you are. I love you just like you are. You don't have to change a thing. If you want to change something, it's okay with me. I love my wife just like she is. Number 5, stress point number 5, unmet needs. Everybody brings certain needs into the marriage. They bring emotional needs, they bring physical needs, obviously, relational needs, intellectual needs. We talked about that a little bit. And when those needs are not met, when you come into the marriage and maybe you meet 2 of those needs, right? But you don't meet the emotional need, or you don't meet the physical need, or whatever it may be, or the relational need, just to talk. We're going to talk about talking here in a little bit. And you bring those needs and they go unfulfilled, it just causes stress in the marriage. It's a basic stress point when you're not able to meet the needs that your marriage partner needs to have fulfilled. God designed the whole thing, marriage, love, sex, and the purpose of it all is to benefit each other. I'm empty without my wife. I'm half a person without her. I'm unfulfilled without her. I've told her many times that if I had to choose over again, I'd still choose her. The only difference is I would have chosen it earlier. That's right. She's the one person on the earth that I cannot live without. right? That's the love that I have for my wife. That's the love that every pastor, every man ought to have for his wife. And so, you have basic needs, your mate has basic needs, and God intends for you to meet each other's needs. Go to 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 3. I think we read that earlier, but just go there for a minute. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 3. Now, this is a great verse here. And you can translate this word affection in a number of ways, but I want to keep it simple. It says, "Let the husband render to his wife the affection," and it says in my translation that's due her. I want to say that she deserves. Okay, I just want to translate it that way or interpret it that way. That's what Paul is really saying. Husband, give to your wife the affection that she deserves. And likewise, also the wife to her husband. I was counseling with somebody a while back. It was really crazy. And I was talking to them about how much I tell my wife that I love her in a day, and all the different ways that I do that. And it just goes on all day. It'll go on tonight when we go home. We'll be talking about it. We'll go to bed, and I'll say something affectionate to my wife before we go to bed. Just tell her how much I love her. I can't live without her. And but I rarely ever call her by her first name. Her first name is Brenda. I call her sweetheart. You know, I use terms of affection, not infection, but terms of affection, terms of endearment. And so I was counseling with this one guy, and he says, we don't ever do that. And so one night I was telling my wife about it, and I said, I love you, Brenda. And she just started laughing. We were in the bed. I just said, because we had talked about it earlier, I said, I love you, Brenda, good night. And I couldn't even imagine doing that, talking to my wife that way. Why? Because I love her so much. I want to come up with terms of endearment and affection. Because God tells me to, right? Render to the wife the affection that she deserves, that's due her.
I think the King James translated that better than the New American Standard, because they don't even put any affection in there. It just says the husband must fulfill his duty to his wife.
I was like, ESV is the same way. I mean, it's interpreted to mean conjugal.
I like the way the New King James translated. They must have got some nuance from there to translate it like that.
Well, I didn't look at all the different translations, but it's still, we know that intuitively it's the right thing.
Absolutely.
So, you both have basic needs, and it's the responsibility of your partner to help meet those needs. I have certain needs in my life. It's my wife's responsibility to help meet those needs. She has certain needs. It's my responsibility to meet her needs. For instance, let me give you a couple of for instances. Men need to understand that their wife wants them to fulfill their needs without them having to tell us what they are.
You know why.
That's the truth. They don't want to have to draw a diagram of what they need in their life. The fact is, most of the time, we're just not that smart, you know. Honey, would you give me a diagram of what you really need? They want us to know what they need because we communicate with them. Sweetheart, where do you feel unprotected or you know, how can I protect you in this area of your life? you know, James convinced me to get one of those little things you carry in your pocket,
Pepper spray.
pepper spray. Do you carry pepper spray? Does your wife carry pepper spray?
No.
She probably carries it
Here's
good.
good.
She carries it good. And no, she does.
She's my backup.
Hey,
But I went out and got her some, you know. The reason I go with my wife everywhere, because I don't want her by herself. It's very rare that she goes somewhere without me, to a store especially. Especially a place like Walmart where those guys can kind of sneak up on you and you not even know it. Sometimes I just want to say that men just don't get it sometimes. We're on a different wavelength than our wife. We're concerned with making money and what we have to do to support our family. And so meeting their needs is a skill that we have to learn. It's not automatic. And even though I deeply love my wife, I want to say this, even though before we ever got married, I loved her the first time I ever saw her, honestly. I had to make adjustments in the marriage. She had to make adjustments in the marriage. Every marriage in this room has had to make adjustments. I've heard both of your wives talk about, or both of you talk about the adjustments you had to make in your marriage.
That's right.
But we talk about them now like we made them, right? Which is the good thing, not like we're still making a lot of adjustments. Nope, that's not a good thing. So, I thought she would want to do everything the way that I wanted to do things, but I found out very quickly that wasn't the case. This wasn't the case. She didn't think like I did. I didn't think like she did. And I think the point here is very simple, that just because you get married does not mean that you will know how to meet the needs of your mate, even if you love them very, very much. You can love them very, very much and still not understand how to meet their needs. Now that's a critical point to me. That's a very, very critical point. It's not a stress point yet, but it's a critical point. That just because you love them does not mean that you know how to meet their needs. It takes skill that has to be learned. It takes time, it takes wisdom, it takes compromise, it takes forgiveness, it takes a lot of different things to make marriage work. Number 6, stress point number 6. Unforgiven mistakes. A lot of couples, they hold on to their hurts way too long. Just way, way too long. And what it does is every time that you hold on to a hurt, it strains the relationship. It strains it. It diminishes it in some way. That the relationship that you have with your mate, it actually undermines and destroys, and I think this is the key word, and we'll talk about this more in the other section. But what it does when you are not able to forgive one another, it destroys the element of intimacy in the marriage. And you cannot have a fulfilled marriage without intimacy. I'm intimate with my wife. I'm intimate with my wife all the time. We hug, we kiss, we caress, we talk, we do everything. We're in love. I love my wife so much that I don't even know how to say how much I love her. There's nothing that she's ever done that I even want to mention to her.
It also destroys trust that they, that they're there,
That you still remember it.
Yeah, well, trust that they're not gonna bail out.
Right.
You know what, I'm tired, I just can't deal with that anymore, I'm out.
Right.
it destroys trust, you know, that they're gonna stick with you through thick and thin.
That's important because there's gonna be a lot of thick.
Mm-hmm.
There's gonna be a lot of thin,
Mm-hmm.
you know. It's these marriage vows don't seem to mean much to people, you know. It just they don't seem to mean much to people.
You know, Gary, I like 1 Corinthians 13:5. It's one thing that I point out to people. It says, talking about love, love does not act unbecomingly, it does not seek its own, is not provoked. This is the part, does not take into account a wrong suffered. And I try to tell people, that's really something, a wrong suffered. I mean, it's something that you suffered. And the Bible's saying that love doesn't keep an account of a wrong suffered. And I think we need to get that into our heads.
Sure. Absolutely.
Because Christ didn't keep an account of a wrong he suffered on our part.
Hallelujah. Well, you know, James, what happens is that when you get two imperfect people into a marriage, they're going to find ways to hurt one another. It's just that simple. I've never been married before. My wife and I have never been married. She'd never been married before. We found ways to hurt one another, you know, probably me worse than her. And even when two people really love each other, they still are going to hurt each other. I've loved her all my life, I mean for 50 years, 51. But I know that there have been plenty of times that I hurt her. And I think I'm grateful that she's forgiven me for those times, for those moments when that has happened. The Bible teaches that unforgiveness kills the spirit of a marriage. Unforgiveness kills the spirit of a marriage. It destroys the spirit of a marriage. That's what you were talking about, Chris. It just destroys it. You can literally bury your marriage with a lot of little digs, you know, just little demeaning remarks that you make, ugly things that you say, you know, just kind of saying something ugly and just walking away and turning around and not being humble about what's taking place. You can destroy your marriage with those digs that you're going to say what you got to say.
Well, the man usually can get over them quicker than the woman, Gary. That's just what I found, is that me and my wife, you know, in the beginning of our marriage, we were very immature. We thought we were more mature than we were. But we could get in an argument, and a day or two later, I'm fine. But I think women cut deeper than men. Would you agree with that?
I'm not going to say anything in front of my wife. No.
That's not an insult.
No, I don't.
A lot of personality comes into play.
I think temperament, personality, all that kind of stuff enters into it. Everybody's just different. I think there are a lot of men that just hold grudges. I know one man that if you look at him wrong, he's going to hold that grudge against you for the next six years or something. So,
Well, it goes back to the idea that a generalization being that women are more passionate than men. I've explained this to a friend of mine about one of their children. They made a comment that one of their sons is a very passionate person, and they're seeing it in the good things. He's very kind, loving heart, and I was like, just be aware. That passion switch doesn't get turned off. You see it now in the good. I'm a similar way. But when they're angry, they're going to be just as passionate about why they're angry, just like when they're loving. I mean, so women are by definite or by a generalization more passionate. I think it's probably gonna be the same thing. Yeah, they're more passionate in showing that love and affection. They're also a whole lot more passionate in showing that anger too.
Well, certainly that's something that we have to learn to control.
Oh yeah.
You know, I mean, we talked about anger a lot in my church for a good while. It's that you got to think like God thinks in order to be able to control those kind of things. You know, I would say this for the benefit of the men and my wife and has heard me say this. In fact, James and Chris have heard me say it often, is that God teaches men much more through their failure than he does through their success. So the woman has to give the husband the freedom to fail, because that's how God deals with him. And if she takes away that freedom to fail, and she doesn't embrace him when he does fail, it makes it much more difficult on the marriage. I think that's a really huge principle. I've learned a lot more through my failure than I have through my success, and it's a very important principle for a marriage. So you can't hold on to your hurts. Your partner may make a major mistake, and if you don't let them off the hook, you'll begin to destroy the spirit of the marriage. And I want to say something to you, that once the spirit of the marriage is gone, the only way that I know how to say it from a counseling perspective is that you've lost the marriage. It's very difficult to get it back. Once you've said enough digs, once you reach that straw that breaks the camel's back, once you've emotionally hurt, the marriage is gone. It's not going to be repaired over a period of time. And so the longer you let these things go on, the more difficult it makes it to make them right. And I think you'll find that to be true. Your partner may make a major mistake, and if you don't let him off the hook, the intimacy's gone, the spirit of the marriage is gone, you become an unpleasable spouse, and no matter what they do, no matter how good, how nice, how romantic, how loving, how kind they are to you, you can't receive it. You just cannot receive it. You've got this hurt. You won't let go of it. There's the digs. There's the reminders. Bringing up something from 40 years ago. Well, I remember when you did this. I remember when you said that to me. Do you remember that? No, I don't really remember that. Don't want to remember that. You have this scale that kind of says, yes, they did that good, but they did this bad. No matter what they do good for you, in the back of their mind, they're thinking, yeah, but you still owe me. My wife doesn't owe me anything. Nothing. She doesn't, there's nothing that she has to change for me. And so if you keep score, everybody listen, if you keep score, all you're doing is killing your marriage. If you keep score about what you have done, or how you failed, or how your partner failed, and you got them in the back of your mind, and you're always sort of rehearsing that with them and telling them, but when you're killing your marriage. And a lot of couples do that. That's the way that they manipulate one another. My wife and I have counseled with so many couples that have never learned how to forgive, ever. They don't know how to forgive, right? They just don't have a clue what forgiveness is. Don't understand it, don't know how to do it, don't know how to exercise it. I hear things they bring up that literally happened years and years and years ago. And they just never let go of those hurts for their marriage's sake. I can honestly say that there's nothing that my wife has ever done to me that I've not completely forgiven her for, or vice versa. I don't think there's anything that I've ever done that hurt my wife that she's not forgiven me for. And we're clean. They're gone. The hurts are gone. She doesn't hurt me. I don't hurt her. So how do you deal with the hurt? We'll turn to Colossians chapter 3 and verse 13. Colossians 3 and verse 13 says that we're to bear with one another and forgive one another. If anybody has a complaint against another, even as Christ forgave you, so you also must do. Now, I know this is not talking about marriage, but if there's any place where this is necessary, it's in the marriage. You forgive one another. You bear with one another. If you have a complaint, you forgive because Christ forgave. In other words, be gentle and ready to forgive, and just don't hold grudges. I think you need to say, God, whatever it takes, I'm going to commit myself to making this work. It's a lifetime
Amen.
commitment. We're going to make this work. All right, part 2, qualitative differences. Qualitative differences. The first part that we talked about, I called, what I call those basic stress points.
That was 6, right?
No,
You had 6 of them?
I had 7.
I missed some.
You mean the basic stress points?
Yeah.
I think it was 6.
I had 6.
Okay, just making sure I had them all. Thank you.
Okay. These are qualitative differences. So what we've just seen is that men and women are very different. If you don't believe so, just take a woman, put her up beside a man.
Much more beautiful than the man.
Yeah.
Speak for yourself.
Normally have more hair. Normally have more hair. I don't know many women that go bald. For some reason, I don't know. I don't know what
I'm
that is.
going to call them.
No, I've seen some, but they, both men and women, they both share the image of God, but they're created male and female. Now, some people don't get that. That's all I'll say about it. But the problem that most marriages have is that they don't understand the differences that exist in the differences that exist between the husband and the wife. And so those differences become tremendous points of tension and conflict in the marriage, where I think God's designed them to become tremendous areas of growth and trust and complimenting one another. My wife really compliments me, and I believe that I compliment her in the same way. I believe that you and Tracy, I've known y'all for forever. Seems like that's a good thing.
Yeah, 26 years.
Yeah. Chris got saved in our church, and his wife,
She did too.
she got saved there too. So I've known them, and they've just been a wonderful, wonderful couple. And so we're attracted to our partner's differences before marriage, but listen carefully, we're repelled by them after marriage. That's what the young couples that you might deal with and that you might actually be counseling, that's one of those areas where you have to understand that they don't get that. You couldn't convince them of that before marriage, but a year after marriage, some of them are already ready to bail out. Trust me. They're ready to go. Because what attracted them before repels them afterwards. It's so easy, but so wrong to think that our spouses are like us and that they see everything the way that we do, when in reality, they rarely ever do. We could sit around this room for the rest of this course, probably, and talk about the differences and where we and our partners disagreed on basic, simple things and couldn't get along because of it. Had to have our way. Had to push for it. And it's so easy but so wrong to think that we all see things the same way. That's a miscalculation for anybody that is going into a marriage. Okay, so this is qualitative difference number 1. These are different than stress points, but they are differences, qualitative differences. You can just call it QD, right? Qualitative difference number one. Men and women differ in how they see the world and their role in it. Now, I want you to think, I'm not talking to you that have been married for a long time. This is for couples that are going to be married, that don't get it yet. Men see the world as sort of a race, as a war, as a hunt. They want to achieve and produce and succeed and hunt and find and conquer and all of that kind of stuff, you know. I'm going to Lowe's, I want to get that thing, I'm going to come home and build it. You know, it's just, that's the way it works in my mind. I don't have time to spend shopping, you know.
I told Cindy, I said, you know, if we were all women, we would have never went to the moon. I mean, we just never would have.
I mean, what would have been the purpose of that? You know?
No, and whether you believe they went to the moon or not, I'm just saying that
Oh, here we go.
that's a controversy.
Here we go.
No, I mean, that is a controversy today, but
Unfortunately.
I said, you know, it'd be too risky for a woman to do that. They calculate it, you know, you could get hurt, you know, but a man, like I said, honey, you know, we would have never went to the moon if we were all women. There's good things about the differences.
Yeah, they are. They are.
No reproduction.
And men see themselves as runners and warriors and providers and,
Protectors.
you know, protectors. I think that's a good word. Ask most men who they are and they will tell you what they do. They'll tell you by terms of their occupation. I'm an architect, I'm a mechanic, I'm a truck driver, I work at a deer processing plant. That's what they're going to tell you. It's what they do. That's their
identity.
That's their identity, right? Somebody said, you know, want to know something about me? I'm a pastor. That's what I'm going to tell them. You know, immediately they get a picture of who I am. I manage a company. I'm a policeman. You know, whatever it may be. And may care deeply for their families as intensely as their wives do, but in their souls, men want to achieve and succeed and win and provide and protect. And the woman's on a different wavelength. She's on a different wavelength. Trust me. God created them male. Women see the world as more of a family. They want to nurture and care. They want to shelter. They see themselves as peacemakers and settlers, and they're more warm homebodies than the men are. They're more driven to relate and to associate and to cultivate. You know, in some churches they have this thing they call Mom's Morning Out or something like that. What's it called? There's something it's called MOP.
Mother's Day Out.
Mother's Day Out or something like that. They don't have a men's day out. They don't. They don't have a men's day out. They have a men's fish fry.
Yeah, or breakfast.
Yeah, a men's breakfast something. But they don't have a Mother's Day out or something. Women, they long for friendships and family and children and for a home because God created them female. That's a qualitative difference. They see the world differently. They see their role in the world differently than a man does. The man thinks that the woman sees it like he does, and they don't. I'm glad that we don't. Qualitative difference too. Men and women differ in how they talk and how they communicate. Men and women differ in how they talk and how they communicate. Women, for instance, they tend to share their feelings, how they feel. Men tend to share information. Women thrive on communication. Men thrive on activity, on action. In marriage, this is very important to me, women want to have a verbal relationship with their husband no matter how much time it takes. If you've ever read anything about the studies that go on and about how many words a man uses in a day and how many words a woman uses in a day, a man uses about 20,000 words. I may have maybe a little bit off, but it's pretty close. And a woman uses about 30,000 words a day. If she's at home with children, she's talking to children all day. And if a man's at work, he's at his desk typing and doing whatever he does. And so when the man gets home, his tank is full. He's already used all his words up. He's done. He's used all his words up. He's got his 20,000. He wants to go lay on the couch, watch a ball game, just sit down, not do much. The wife's still got 10,000 words in her tank, and she needs somebody to talk to. You know, sometimes my wife will want to tell me all the details about something. And she knows that I'm not listening very good. She knows I'm not listening very good. I'm trying to be a good listener, baby. And but she knows I really just wasn't interested in that thing. And so sometimes she'll just stop talking, which hurts me because I should be listening to her. She's a lot more important. What she has to say to me is a lot more important than what I could watch on some television screen, trust me. Not men. They want companionship and recreation and social activities and different functions. And men tend to go somewhere and do something, and women tend to stay somewhere and do something, right? Men want to go and get something done, and women want to stay and get something done. Just completely opposite. I'm just telling you, we're the opposite. If you don't believe that men and women are different, just go down to the grocery store and look at the differences between the women's magazines and the men's magazines. The differences are actually extreme. Some company mailed me this sample magazine for men's for several months and try to entice me to buy this magazine, which I did not do. Right? I wasn't inclined to buy it, and I wasn't going to buy it. All it seemed to talk about was how to be more sexually active. They'd mail you the magazine, you know, Men's Health or something like that, and how to become a hulk, you know, a physical hulk. Do I look like I'm a hulk? I mean, honestly, do I look like I'm the kind of person that I'm 5'7", 5'7" and shrinking? You know, I'm going to have to start wearing some suspenders to keep my pants from falling off my behind and all that kind of stuff as I get older here. I always wondered why men did this, but now I know why they did that. My wife does subscribe to magazines, and they are so different. They talk about recipes, decorations, house repairs. Isn't that right, baby? That's what they talk about. They talk about those kind of things, how to make cheesecake, how to fix up your home, family issues. Not how to get steroids and get bigger. Men order Golf Digest and women order Better Homes and Gardens. Listen, if we took the paper, we don't take the paper anymore, but we used to have our local paper there in Aiken. If we took the paper, I'd get it. Does anybody know where I would immediately turn to? Anybody tell me?
Sports.
The sports page. I didn't even look at the front page to see what was going on. I never read the editorials. I didn't give a hoot about them. My wife, now this is crazy. My wife would always turn to the sales ads. You know, the ones that got all the color in them. And you don't throw those things away. They're like gold to a woman walking through a store. Hey, they got chicken on sale today, you know, and off we go. You know where the chicken is in the store, so we go get the chicken. And, but she always looked at the obituary column, which just, I never looked at the obituary column. I mean, there was a difference between the way that we thought about things. Qualitative difference 3. This will be the last one that I cover, and then we'll stop. Men and women differ in their understanding of their sexuality. This is big. Men see sex primarily as a physical act, and women see sex as an emotional relationship. Sexual attraction for men begins with their eyes and what they see. And there are a lot of women that don't really understand that at all. I'll give you an example of that here in just a minute. A beautiful woman just has the tendency to raise a man's his sexual voltage or something, you know. They don't call it playgirl, do they? They call it playboy, right? And it doesn't matter to a man, you know, what he's watching. The men that watch pornography, they don't care about who it is. It means nothing to them. It's just sexual attraction for a woman begins with what they hear. We know of a lady that was married, and their marriage was kind of flat, and she went to a store. I mean, a kind of an insignificant store, and the guy that was behind the counter used a term of endearment, called her sweetheart. And about 2 or 3 days later, they were sleeping together. Because her husband never talked to her that way. It was sad. It was sad. It was sad. They lost their marriage. A man with a gift of tender talk just raises a woman's emotional voltage. And most women that I know who've been involved in affairs had it all started when a man spoke tender, kind of romantic type words to her. That's when it happens, you know. A man's sexual desire is often impulsive. He just thinks about it and he wants to do it. That's the way it is, you know. Hey, let's go do this, right? He can be easily aroused, and a woman's sexual desire is normally much more selective. She responds to words, caring, attractiveness, personality, and especially the awareness that somebody finds her attractive. I tell my wife all the time how beautiful she is. I say, you're not only beautiful on the outside, you're beautiful on the inside. You're beautiful all over. You're the most gorgeous thing on the planet to me. I find her extremely attractive. And it makes her want to know him better. That's why a husband should constantly tell her wife how attractive she is. Let me just show the negative side of this and how all of this gets perverted in our culture. Okay, it's important in the culture that we live. In our culture, the epitome of male lust is pornography. It's full of nudity, exploitation. I don't look at it, so I don't know much about it, but it's full of all of these things, rape. It makes no difference who the man is looking at. They never even know these people, don't even care about them. On the other hand, women are not as easily, or used not to be, let me say it that way, maybe they're different actors, are not as addicted to pornography as men used to be, right? It all started with Playboy and those kind of things, and now I think with the internet and bisexual and all that kind of stuff, and lesbianism, and who knows what else is out there that I don't know about. women generally were not addicted to pornography. In American culture, the epitome of female lust is the afternoon TV soap operas. It is. It has always been that way since I can remember as a kid. I don't want my wife watching TV soap operas, and she does it. Those things are dirty, nasty, ugly, filthy, immoral, ungodly, fornication, adultery, everything that is wrong. That's what they are about.
Yeah.
And it's because they're full of drama and romance and intrigue and adultery, and it's like women, for some reason, are drawn to that.
Now it's the Bachelor and Bachelorette.
Oh my goodness, those things go on for hours on TV. If you
Sex in the City.
if you look up the Bachelor, Bachelorette, I mean, we don't watch it, but it's not just an hour. It's like a 2 or 3 hour thing now. I mean, it's just grown exponentially, you know. And one guy having sex with 15 women. It's just unbelievable, or vice versa. It's for a woman, things are much more relational, and a man, seldom is a man addicted to soap operas. There may be some, but I haven't ever met any, I don't think. You know, in fact, it's kind of interesting because if you go and watch one of those programs, any kind of program, whether it's a sports program, you're going to tell who the audience is by what the advertisements are like. Beer, you know, you watch a football game, you got all this stuff about beer, more beer. If you go to watch the soap operas, they got things that they're selling, soap, detergent, and diapers. You know, they know who their audience is by who is what the advertise. We know what they're going to advertise. They know what women want and are willing to purchase. Men seem to need sex in order to feel love. But when a man's sexual needs are met, he's much more open to communication. You know, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. Sex is a very, very good thing for men and women to have, for a husband and wife to have, let me put it that way. And because it helps to deal with communication, and their interest in the marital relationship increases. Women, on the other hand, need to feel in order to have sex. They need understanding, they need communication first. Men can enjoy sex anytime, anywhere. Doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. If they get stimulated, they can enjoy sex any way. Women doesn't work that way. They need to be relaxed. They need commitment and love and understanding to release that sensual side to their husbands. And just taking time to listen to their wives, to emphasize with them, is one of the hardest realities to communicate to husbands. Let me say that again. Just listening to your wife is one of the hardest realities for a man on the planet. Just sitting there and listening to her talk is one of the most difficult things for most men, married men, as well as young couples. Women want to feel like they really are being understood. Okay. Okay. Anybody have any questions or comments that you want to make? Oops. All right. Chris, you want to handle this for me?